Good afternoon and welcome to our April 30th webinar. This is another webinar that is part of Women Built to Scale, put on by PowHERhouse Media. And the webinar today is all about leaders and energy management, resiliency, and sustainability. And you might be thinking about how does this fit into the overall webinar series called Women Built to Scale? The overall series goal is basically to provide a clear roadmap to Canadian women about the behavioral changes that could be implemented to move women forward faster. And we ask the Canadian powerhouses to join us to share their stories, best practices, lessons learned, and some real life, true, tested, proven recommendations that they would like to share with other women who are also on their journey of reaching their full epic potential. So today we're discussing our energy, and we all know that as we move forward on our leadership spectrum, one of the risks that we have to be aware of is very real, and that's around burnout, self-sabotaging our goals, and basically just running out of steam. So I feel that this is a very important topic to be discussed, and I am so pleased to welcome four amazing women to have a conversation with me today about this. And I'm just going to take a moment and introduce each of these women individually and ask them why they feel that this is such an important conversation to be had at this time. So I will start with Ann Hickey. Hi, Ann.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you so much for taking time to be here today. For those of you that don't know Ann, she is a widely recognized thought leader in gender dynamics, and she's been published in Inc. magazine, Apple News, and the Huffington Post. She's an award-winning speaker, author, and mentor. She's also a corporate director, philanthropist, and a former senior vice president of Potash Corp, the world's largest fertilizer company. So Ann, I'm curious as to why you personally are taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today, and why do you feel this is such an important conversation for leaders to be having?
Because I want to hear everything that all the other bright, smart, capable women have to tell me here.
What can we learn?
Well, that's true. But in addition to that, in my mentorship program at the University of Saskatchewan, what I find all the time is that women come in there, they're mothers, they're executives, or they're working to get to the decision-making table, and they're trying to figure out how to preserve their energy to allow them to do everything. So I think it's really worth all of us taking time to talk about it.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And I think you've nailed it. Like, what can we learn from each other that we're not doing? And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Like, what's that number one daily habit? You know, I'm curious to know what you guys are all doing that maybe I should be doing. So I'm going to introduce Carey Dillen next. And Carey, just give us a wave. Thank you for joining us. Carey is a passionate leader who has contributed extensively to the health and wellness and sports systems, both locally, nationally, as well as internationally. She's currently the president of Y Yoga, which is the largest corporate-owned yoga company in Canada. And previously, she was the VP of Finance for the 2010 Vancouver Olympic Winter Games. And one thing I know about Carey is that she's passionate about growing leaders, building businesses, but also passionate about living her own healthy, active lifestyle. Carey, thank you for being with us today. And I'm just wondering if you could add to that. Why do you think this is such an important conversation to be having?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of like Ann. I want to actually learn from everybody else, be a bit of a sponge today as well. But I also think as a leader in an organization, I need to lead by example. So the more examples that I have and that can help to support around me, the better. I keep hearing this word self-care. So I think kind of diving into what does that mean for each of us, I think is really important. And the word busy always seems to come up when you talk to people. I'm really busy. So I view that as, are you putting your energy in the right places to help move you forward? So I think kind of diving into some of that today will be really interesting for me, and what tools can I take back for myself and others to help support them, I think is really important for me.
Yeah, wow, so agree.
Mm.
So agree. Thank you. I'm going to introduce next Lori Bean. Lori is actually joining us today from close to Calgary, and she has a vision that is taking this concept and blowing it out of the water. Actually, for almost a decade, she has been planning and working on the Malia Women's Empowerment Center. And at this time of our lives, it's never been more of a necessity. At Malia, women of all demographics will have the opportunity, maybe for the first time, to immerse themselves in an environment that attends to all of their needs. It's a hub for women on a journey of self-awareness, awakening, healing, and growth, offering programs and services and events that target all of these realms. It's not a spa nor a treatment center, but something far better. It will be a physical space and a community where women can support women, body, mind, and soul. And I couldn't think of anyone better than Lori to be part of this conversation. So thanks for joining us today, Lori.
Thank you for having me.
I'm curious, from your point of view and the vision that you have, why now, and why is this such an important conversation?
It's an important conversation because personally, I struggled for probably 20 years with severe chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue. It was very detrimental to every part of my life, business, relationships. And it took me that long really to discover and explore the tools to help me get through it and to live life from a different place. And I really, really feel it's important to share that and what I've learned and what we can do so that we don't end up down that path, which is so detrimental. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you. It's a great opportunity, and it's a safe space. We're all here because we want to be. You wouldn't be part of this webinar if it wasn't of interest to you, and that's what we're trying to do, is provide value. I'm going to keep moving along and introduce our fourth guest, Joan Beck. Give us a wave, Joan. Thank you for being here. Now, Joan has just finished a book, and I thought perfect timing. She's the author of a book called Good Food, Your Go-To Guide. She's lived in 3 countries, traveled to many, and experienced being an entrepreneur, educator, administrator, and now author. And, you know, she's experienced the challenges that are demanded by creativity, leadership, balancing a career with a healthy life, and mentoring women to assume leadership. I couldn't think of anyone better to join us today and give us some of her thoughts and reflections. And Joan, I'm wondering if what you might have to add to that question. Why today is it so important for us to be having this conversation?
Well, I think Betty Ann and Lori and Carey have all touched on the important aspect of energy, how much more energy really women expend in leadership because of their multiple roles. And I think the fundamental that we sometimes forget is a healthy eating pattern. And throughout my life, I've tried to do that. And I've always, people I've mentored, encourage them to do the same. Because without that foundation, you don't have your energy. You don't have your positive attitudes. So I think it's a time when the conversation is getting a little louder and a little more animated in healthy eating and healthy living to bring the information forward so that other people can benefit from it.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, one of the things that I definitely reflect on when I'm speaking with women, and I honestly talk about it from my own experience, is that as a leader, you're somewhere on a spectrum. When you're a young leader, you're trying to find your, and I don't mean young as in age, I mean young as in experience and where you're at. You're trying to find your clarity and your confidence and the right connections to move yourself forward. And then as you seem to be on your path and you're really making an impact in your life, a whole other set of challenges come about, and those are more on the lifestyle side of things. And that is sustaining your energy, your resiliency, your vibrancy, your magnetism. You know, it does all boil down to taking care of ourselves and finding that balance. So a lot of times when I meet a woman, I ask them a series of questions, first of all, to determine where they're at on that leadership spectrum. And then that allows me to then to be able to communicate and work with them, just knowing where giving context as to where they're at. So I'd like to dive into our first question, and I'm really going to encourage the four of you to jump in. It needs to be a conversation. I'll throw the question out there and I'll try my best to guide it, but we're going to spend about 20 minutes or so talking about this question. If women are going to be bigger, bolder, and braver, which is the whole point of our theme, Women Built to Scale, in order to scale their growth, their influence, and their impact as leaders, we believe, and as you've just said, they must also scale up their energy. There's absolutely no room to take it for granted. And we know that our energy is directly linked to our own vitality and our magnetism. Can you think of a story, an experience that shares with us evidence of this direct relationship between how we show up every day in our lives and how we're able to attract, accomplish, and take action on our goals? And Carey, I'm going to pick on you to kick off the conversation, but I guess what I'm asking us to go is just to go a step past. This is a step past a conversation about just being healthy. It's a step past what you're talking about, the whole role modeling, how you're attracting, how you're showing up as a leader, and how our health plays right into that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to a story that might help to kind of highlight that. It's interesting. So I've often, as a leader, my team, when they see me a little bit stressed, they call me Energizer Bunny. So kind of like running around in multiple directions and doing a bunch of things. It's quite interesting because they've gotten to know me at a few different roles that I've been at, but it all kind of boils down to the same thing for me personally. And the one comment that they usually say to me was, when was the last time you worked out, went outside, went for a run? And it makes me have a bit of a pause. And usually it'll have been 2 or 3 days. And I go, oh, wow. And they just look at me and say, go to a yoga class, go for a run, take that half an hour. And I'm like, oh. And so it's interesting how for me that helps to reset myself.
Yeah.
But it's also, particularly at the games, we kind of talk about it as, drinking from a fire hose for 5 years. I was there for 5 years, so stuff was constantly coming at you. But that team figured out that for me, it was the physical sort of movement that helped to calm and focus my mind. And that was quite interesting that the team was the one who helped acknowledge that for me. And I even see that now at Y Yoga, where the team will sometimes make that similar comment that for me, it's, oh, yeah, I have to acknowledge that for myself. And of course, I've gotten better at that. But it's been quite interesting that it's the community around me that notices that I'm a better person. I show up in a different way when I have my outlet, because that physical creates that knock on to my mental state and just makes me better. And they see the better me and they want the better me all the time. And they don't always get it all the time. But that was an interesting journey for me over the last kind of 10, 15 years of I need to self-acknowledge that because others around me are noticing it.
Yeah, I think one thing that jumped out at me, and I'm gonna toss it over to Betty in a second, was actually the comment about an outlet. Mm-hmm. Because we all have to have an outlet, and if we don't focus it on the positive, the outlet's going to be not so positive. But it's going to happen, because otherwise we're just going to be bubbling up inside. So then it's going to turn out to be food or alcohol or, just, but the outlet has to happen, because otherwise we're just going to implode. So I think taking that step and making sure it's the positive and is the right way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori, I think you have a comment to mine.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, everything that we've said. It's that it's almost like we have to make it a practice. That's kind of what I'm thinking, because I hate knowing that it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm feeling a little bit tired, but I have to go. I really do. Like for me, with the adrenal fatigue and what have you, I have to go lie down. I have to go sit and do a guided meditation, and I'm lying there like, oh God, is this really interrupting my day? But if I don't, by the next 2 days, I'm down. Like I am down and out. And so I think we really do come last a lot of the time, in business, as a mom, as a wife, or whatever it is. But I've really acknowledged that I have to make myself a priority. There's no option, because after having gone through that, and once you've had, adrenal burnout, it kind of never goes away. You really have to be conscious of what you're doing for self-care. Mm-hmm. And I can now show up all the time, 90% of the time, really as the best version of myself, because I'm making the effort. Mm-hmm. And kind of like you said, Carey, it's funny how other people start to notice it, right? Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's like a practice.
I wonder, Betty, if you can think of an example or a story from your life, because it sounds like what these ladies are talking about is their bodies are now forcing them to stay one step ahead, to have that proactive practice, or else you're just going to be flattened. And I wondered if, what that brings up for you.
I had 2 children very close together, and I was working in a male-dominated environment. And so I was pretending that I was a man. And so I was nursing. I was wanting to be a good mother, but I also wanted to be a good executive. So I was nursing at home, and then I was extracting milk on the road so that I could come home. And I ended up getting very run down, and I got mono, and my mono ended up, the doctor said it would be 3 weeks to 3 months, and it ended up, a year later. I was still sick all the time. I was going to work, but I was coming home and laying on the couch, and I had swollen glands. All the glands in my body were swollen, and the doctor kept sending me off to the lab with every box checked, and everything was coming back negative. So this was 1985. And finally, the doctor sent me to the infectious disease department at the university. And they said, we're going to diagnose you as our first case of Epstein-Barr syndrome. Epstein-Barr syndrome is the precursor to chronic fatigue, but we didn't even know about it then.
Wow.
And so the doctor said, well, this is a good news, bad news story. You have a diagnosis. The good news, that's the good news. The bad news is there's nothing we can do for you. So I decided if there was nothing that traditional medicine could do for me, there must be something I could do for myself. And this was pre-internet. So I went to the library and I got out every book I could find on people who had cured themselves of terminal illness. And I looked for a common thread. And that common thread was that they meditated and visualized themselves healthy. Mm-hmm. So then I thought, okay, I have to learn how to meditate. And the only thing I knew about meditation in 1985 was a friend of mine who had taken transcendental meditation at university. And it, at that time, cost $500 that I didn't have. So I went back to the library and got every book they had on meditation, and it was probably only 5 books. And from those books, I taught myself how to meditate, and I meditated twice a day and visualized myself healthy, and I had almost immediate results. Wow. I found that people at the office got sick. Before that, my immune system had been so bad that if anybody at the office was sick, I immediately caught it. Once I started meditating, it boosted my immunity. I had more energy. I wasn't catching everything at the office. And I have meditated every day since then,
Wow.
from 1985 until now. And I am a big, it's quite common now. I will tell you, when I told people I was meditating in 1985, they thought I was part of a cult or something.
Right.
You know, it is part of, I know that I have to meditate in order to feel grounded and to be healthy. And frankly, it's an important part of a spiritual practice for me that I don't feel like it allows me to kind of turn things over every day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I have to be in control of everything.
Yeah. No, I love it. Wow, since 1985. That's amazing. Joan, I'm wondering if you have an example almost from the flip side. I mean, we've heard some examples of, you know, what's happened when we ignored our health, but I'm wondering if you have an example of a time in your life or a leader that demonstrates the positive, you know, as where that leader was attractive or magnetic, or you experienced it in your own life, perhaps.
Yes, I do. But first, I want to congratulate Betty Ann
Yes.
and Lori for coping with incredible odds and being so successful. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge, day in and day out.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I guess one story that springs to mind, I had a principal and vice principal team in an elementary school where there was a lot of social issues, a lot of immigrant children, some fractured families. So it wasn't the easiest environment for teachers. So teachers were running constantly. And in discussion with the principal and vice principal, we thought that one of the critical issues for that school was to make sure people were healthy, that they were eating healthy food. So she started a breakfast program for the students where half of them were coming to school without food. And this was way back in the 88, 89. So it was sort of before that was being talked about in schools. And in order to make sure the school ran at an optimum rate and pace, she made sure the teachers were healthy. They had mid-morning snacks. They had afternoon snacks prior to meetings. So there was always good, healthy food in their staff room. Not donuts and Danish, but fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, protein, whole grains. And this was long before all that was being talked about. And then whenever they met, they had walking talks. So not only were they eating well, they were exercising. They would have whole meetings with 3, 8, and 10 people walking around the track. And then they ensured that every 6 to 8 weeks, they all got together for a social activity that was both a stretching activity in the way of their skills, exercise, and it ended up with good food. This school connected all the dots. It looked at the healthy eating, it looked at exercise, and it looked at social connections. And those teachers became wonderful role models, just not the principal and vice principal, but the whole staff became role models for not only the students eating well, but they worked with the parents. So they were addressing the problem right at the root. And after several years, there was a complete turnaround. Wow. So that was good leadership.
That's incredible. Like the ripple that went out from that is from what a principal and vice principal decided to do is absolutely incredible. Yeah. I know at this time of year, and some of my colleagues are holding me to it, but I can see when you have a meeting with someone and it's the dead of winter, that you're meeting over coffee, you're meeting over lunch, and you're having a business meeting, or you're sitting. But when it comes to this time of year and the weather's getting nicer and the sun's getting coming out, it's that point is well taken. Why are we sitting during our meetings when we have a conversation to be had? And I know Carey is great, and I'll let her comment on that. But that, you know, the whole walk and talk during a meeting is amazing. Carey, I wonder, how long have you been doing that with your team, and what's that been like?
It's interesting. I've been doing that since about 2005. Yeah. And it's been super positive. We actually do a team plank as well. Started that about 5 years ago. So we take 1.5 to 2 minutes of our day, and everybody gets together to do something physical, but you know, you can do anything for 2 minutes, and nobody has any excuses. So if you come to our office for a meeting and we're planking at that time, you get to plank with us. Suits and all, everybody's down on the floor. So that's a big thing for me, is just we have, most of our staff have standing desks, and have that option, which I think is fantastic. But walking and talking, you've been doing that for years, so we should just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I could just add to that.
Please.
The mentorship program that I have at the Edwards School of Business at the University of Saskatchewan, they're all the mentors, all the womentors, it's all women, all the womentors and the protégés, they're all busy. It's hard for them to fit in meetings. Walking is one of the very popular ways that they get together and have their protégé womentor meetings. But they also do things like, you need groceries, I need groceries, let's walk the aisles together and both be throwing things in our carts at the same time and discussing, you know, your work issues and my suggestions.
Yeah, no, I love it. It sometimes it's just so much easier to do it as a group. I know I haven't done it for a while, but there was a group of us that were doing Monday night cook nights at our local school, because these schools have great home ec, school kitchens. So I would put the, invite out, here's the grocery list for the next Monday night of healthy recipes. Bring your own groceries, but we'll cook together. I'll supply the recipes. We'll cook together, bring your take-home containers. Then you have your healthy food prep done for the week. And, there was a core group of women that loved it. And because they knew they were committed to a framework where they were going to get their healthy meals done and visit and laugh with a group of women together when we were doing that. It was a great way to build a sense of community. And I definitely would like to get something like that going again. But I think what I'm hearing is doing it as a group is helpful, and we have to start rethinking our meetings and how we're working together as leaders to just integrate the healthy right into what we're doing. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to bump into, unless anyone's got any other comments on that one, but I'm going to head into the next question or set of questions. And that one is more around making sure we're talking about, we all make mention, well, I wonder what the other women are doing in the group. And I want to give us a chance to all comment, but this might be the opportunity where some of the people on the line, I'd be happy to mic people if they have something to contribute. But so I'll just read here. We'd like to walk away with some very tangible tips, tools, strategies, and insights that we can implement into our own daily practice as powerful leaders. And I'm curious if you could share your number one habit, your energy management, sustainability, resiliency habit for leaders. And if we have time, we'll go back around to number two, or we'll open it up to our guests. But I'll kick it off by saying that first and foremost, I have to make sure that I sleep enough. If I don't get enough sleep, I can't function. My eating derails, and I'm not as alert during meetings. So people know me that I get up very early, but I also go to bed very early. So that's probably my number one thing. And I'll actually open this one up. Maybe we'll start with Joan this time around. What would you say if you had to pick your number one habit or tip or strategy that you would give to the other women that are with us today, Joan?
I guess my number one throughout my whole life is to have a really good breakfast. Like you, I get up early, I do a bit. Usually I get 2 or 3 hours of work done and then have a solid breakfast. That'll take you through to lunch. You may have a little morning snack. Eat protein every meal, just a small bit of it. That keeps you going. And don't, for goodness sake, I try, no matter how busy I am, is never ever to skip a meal. Because then your blood sugar just crashes and you become ineffective as a leader.
Yeah, exactly. And Joan, I don't want to take too much time, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so I'll come back. But I'm curious, and I bet you I'm not the only one, what your go-to breakfast is. And we're going to come back to you after the other ladies answer, but I'm super curious. Lori, can you tell me what if you had to pick one, what your number one habit would be that it's got to happen?
Well, sleep. I'm kind of like you.
Mm-hmm.
I probably have more sleep than you. I need a lot of sleep, and I never make super early morning meetings because I'm not a morning person and I can't function. But in addition to that, like can I talk about what I've discovered lately, which has really changed my life? And I know we've all heard about the power of the mind and what have you, but I've really started to embrace taking time in the day to really be conscious about what I'm thinking about, because I've really started to discover that affects everything about me. And my husband said to me not long ago, he said, you can't leave what's going out there. You bring it inside. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm present and I'm living in the moment and whatever. I think I'm doing that. But I started to really take certain times of the day, and like 2:00, and I look at my watch, what am I thinking about? And it's always something consuming me other than a good feeling thought. And I've really started to become aware of that, and intentionally I'm working on shifting it, and it's shifting everything. I mean, it's actually blowing my mind. And again, it's a practice. And I mean, even my idea around it is to set a timer on your phone or on your watch or whatever it is, and really think about what you're thinking about. I think, thoughts are forces, and they create your vibration. And I've really noticed the difference in the vibration that I'm giving off when I'm not in a great thinking place. Like we have the choice to think whatever we want to think. I'm powerful, I'm strong, I'm beautiful, I'm healthy, I'm successful, feels good. Maybe that's not all your reality in the moment, but it's better than, oh my God, this is going on and that's going on and what have you. And it doesn't matter. You can think whatever you want to think. So I could go on for quite a bit about that, but it's completely changed my life.
Neat. No, I can see how excited you are about it, and you're inspiring me. So just so I have this right, just want to make sure from the technique point of view, do you just set your timer on your phone for a few, like various times throughout the day as a double check to just be like, okay, what's consuming you right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the shocking thing, because we all think we're in this great mindset, 98% of the time it's a negative thought. It's a fearful thought, it's a stressful thought, it's a negative thought. And that's a little bit frightening. So you have the thought, and then you can change it right away and be in that energy.
Yeah.
And it changes everything.
I love it. And the power of the pivot, right? The power of the pivot. And I bet you after 30 days or 90 days, I will check in with you on this, and maybe we'll be accountability buddies. But,
cool.
It's like a muscle. It's like any other muscle. So I bet it's just going to get, you'll be setting that timer and you'll be getting a much different result after just a little bit of time. So,
Yeah, because we don't know what we don't know. Like, I had no idea that most of my thoughts weren't beautiful, amazing, positive thoughts. I thought that's how I thought. So does that make sense?
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Betty Ann, what would you say your number one would be, your number one habit or your go-to? I know you talked a lot about meditation. I'm wondering if anything else comes to mind.
Well, just let me reinforce what Lori's saying, because I do find with my mentorship program that we spend a lot of time talking about what people are thinking, because we know that our thoughts can really limit us. And so often what I find is that women take things so personally or take it to heart, and it's such an energy drainer. They get on the elevator in the morning with the CEO and they make a joke and he doesn't laugh, and they then spend the rest of the morning beating themselves up and saying, oh my gosh, how can I be so stupid, and I'm never going to go anywhere in this company anyway, and so maybe I should be looking for another job. Whereas in fact, the CEO may have just had a phone call, but there had been an accident in a mine before he got in the elevator, so he was distracted thinking about that. But this woman who gets in the elevator with it makes it her problem, and it ruins her day. So we spend a lot of time. So I guess if there was one tip that I would give, it would be value your story and make sure that your story is positive. And first of all, we talk about telling our own personal story about who we are, because it's a good way for women to promote themselves. We talk about using stories to connect with other women, because, or with anyone. You find common ground through stories. But mostly, if you don't like the way things are going, make up a different story. And an example I give is a friend of mine who said that she was explaining something to her CEO and she thought he rolled his eyes. And she was very offended. She spent the rest of the day, and this voice in her head was just telling her all, you know, Arianna Huffington calls it the obnoxious roommate in your head. And she was just, you know, saying how bad, you're never going to go anywhere in this company because, you know, natter. She went home that evening. She said to her husband, can you believe the CEO rolled his eyes? And he said, maybe he just had something in his eye. And she said, you know, I think that's a better way of looking at things. So she made up a different story and she released a whole bunch of negative energy and was able to move forward.
Yeah,
so
I love,
value of the story.
I love that. I got to remember that. That person probably just has something in their eye. Carey, you're number one. You're number one.
Ooh, tough for me. It's funny, Betty Ann, I actually call it the record that plays in your head. You need to change the record. That's what I usually say. You need to hit pause or go to the next one or what have you. But yeah, I call it the record. My number one, it's interesting. I kind of relate a little bit to Lori and Betty Ann. So I just call it my quiet time, whether it's meditation or what have you. But for me, it's that. It's when I feel like I'm my best self. I'm more focused. I'm more creative. All of those things when I have my quiet time. So for me right now, it's that time on my mat where, and it's the removing of the stories and the to-do lists and just having and spending time with myself and connecting with what am I feeling? How is my body? How is my mind? But just being a lot more centered and to take away all of that sensory deprivation. It's almost a little bit of it's just you and only you. And most of my yoga practice, I have my eyes closed. Because it's trying to connect with myself, and I'm a better me when I leave there than likely when I came in, and it's trying to continue with that practice outside of the mat, outside of those walls. Before, for me, my moving meditation was running, where I was outside breathing in fresh air, that kind of thing. So for me, I just call it my quiet time, where I'm just with myself. I don't run with music. I like yoga just to be by myself. It's sort of my sanctuary, where I get to be with me, and to kind of to Lori, where you start reflecting on some of those stories and just you get a better feeling for yourself. For me, anyways, when I leave.
Nice.
I don't think that we connect enough with who we are and where we are. At a point in time, and the stories and the things and the stuff just keep kind of coming. But if you don't kind of slow everything down, and just really reflect on what you're feeling and where you're at, I think it's huge. It's huge. And I don't think we do enough of that because of time and busy and stuff and priorities and balance and all of those wonderful things. So for me, it just depends. If I can't make it to a yoga class because I don't have an hour in my day, sometimes I do like Lori and I'll just kind of like lay down. So I lay down on my bed with like my little yoga pillow, eye pillow thing that goes on there, a little lavender or something like that. And I just take my 5-10 minutes to just reconnect.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do enough of that because we think it takes too long or we don't want to make that a priority. So yeah, we need to reframe that for ourselves and for everybody around us to help us support that. I think that's really important because you need everybody else's buy-in a little bit if you have a family or other people sort of buying for your time. So I think you need to make it as much of a priority for yourself, and they will too.
Neat. Yeah, well, I can't say that I'm surprised how similar the answers have been, you know, with Lori, Betty Ann, and yourself. And
I still want to know what Joan has for breakfast.
I know, we're going back there. We're going back there. So what I'd love for you to think about, because I'm going to come back to this, but what I'd love for you to think about is this. That is something that you make sure is a habit for every day. Now, what would you say your number one thing would be for once a week? So that's your daily. But now, is there something that you make sure happens once a week to set you up for your week? I'm just curious. Maybe there's nothing different, but I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. The difference between daily habits and what's the weekly strategy or action. But in doing so, I'm just going to ask you, Joan, to share your breakfast idea.
Okay, one of my absolute go-to breakfasts, no matter how busy I am, is my own homemade granola, which has all whole grains, nuts, dried fruits, with fresh fruit in season, and especially berries, because they particularly high in antioxidants and really good for us overall, and good no fat or very low fat yogurt, plain, no flavors. That'll set you up till at least 11 o'clock. And if you want a recipe and all the good healthy ones,
there we go.
A good food book.
Hold it back for us so we can see the whole. Hold it there. They're awesome.
Actually, I'm going across to Victoria tomorrow to go and pick up the first printing. So you're the first people seeing this.
Oh, that's so fabulous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have to admit that I felt the book, and it is substantial. Like it's pretty great. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Okay.
And actually, if I may say, when I need to have Charlene really attend a meeting, I make sure we always have it at lunchtime.
I know. She always says, could you come over? You know, we're going to have a meeting. I'm like, oh, if it's at Joan's house, I'm so there. I'm so there. Okay, I'm curious. I'm going to double back once, and then I might open it up just for a couple of comments to the guests that I see, because I'd like you to be able to share. I know there's some wisdom there as well, if you feel comfortable. But what do you do once a week? If you've shared the daily, now what's the thing that has to happen once a week to keep you on track? And Carey, maybe if I could, I'll start with you again.
I'm pretty quick. It's meal planning for me. It's doing my grocery shop, and I actually did a lot of my cooking yesterday because it was Sunday to set myself up for the entire week. So that's my thing. Because if I don't do that, just time slips away, and I want to make sure I have something healthy to eat all the time. And that's my thing.
And I'll kind of come back to you unless you've got it on the tip of your tongue like we did with Joan, but are there 2 or 3 things that are your absolute go-tos, or even one thing that you make sure and make every single week? They're just your go-tos. I
do hot lemon water in the morning, Ayurvedic stuff, so I do that. I have my collagen in the morning as well. And I always have some sort of vegetable salad with some protein for lunch. That's my go-to for everything. And in the winter, it's usually some sort of vegetable soup with some protein. But those are my two absolutes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I think I need the book.
We'll make sure you get the information about the book. I know I was grateful for some new ideas, because I honestly have been making the same meal prep, patties and turkey chili and you name it, but I'm doing the same stuff for so many years. I need some new ideas, so I'm actually pretty grateful for it. So Lori, what is something that you try to do once a week, every week, religiously to keep you on track?
Every Sunday, I spend the entire day with Paul, no interruptions. 90% of the time, I try not to look at my computer, no phone calls, and be really, 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 really present. And for him and for me, because I can easily work 24 hours a day, every day. And I just feel so full at the end of Sunday. Like Sunday night, I feel so good, and I can start the week. So for me, that's my thing. That's my thing.
Nice. That break, that physical break.
Yeah, and being really present and knowing that I've shut all that off, I can be more present and loving, and because there's always distraction.
Yeah.
So that's my thing.
Nice. Betty Ann, what's something that you try to make sure happens every single week to set you up for success?
I'm going to answer that, but I just wanted to just reinforce the people that have been talking about needing, well, and you too, about needing change in what you're eating. And I just find change was going to be an answer I was going to give previously when you asked for a tip, because I find that whether it's the kind of exercise I'm doing, what I'm eating, or even the route that I take from one place to another, it just wakes me up when I do things differently. So, if I do things routinely all the time, I find it gets like rote. And they say when you go to a gym that you shouldn't be using the same muscle, you should be changing up your exercise. Well, I find it's like that for me for everything. I need to change up what I'm eating. I need to change up the way that I'm exercising. I need to just do things differently, because that kind of wakes me up and makes me more stimulated.
Yeah.
But that's not really my answer. My answer for well, what was this? What we do once a week? For me, it is that I have to have something cultural. So I have to go to a movie or go to an art gallery. I have to have something where I feel like I'm going to step outside of my regular life, and maybe that goes along with the change. But I do find that when I go to an art gallery and I look at art, I kind of step outside myself. There's some wonder in that makes me feel like life is not mundane anymore. And so I guess I need fantasy. So I need to make sure that I build in time in my life so that I'm getting some, I can go to a movie and turn myself over to it and live somebody else's life for a couple hours.
Wow, that's great. I'm going to give you a bit of warning about the last question that I am going to ask you, and I will include it with this. If there's something that you'd also like to add to the conversation, we've got about 10 minutes left that you haven't had a chance to say yet. But I guess what I'm curious of is there something that you would like to invite more of into your life that you think, we're talking about the things that we are doing, that we're aware of, we're trying to make habits. Is there something that talking about change, I guess Betty Ann inspired me. Is there something that you're actively looking to invite more of into your life? And I'll kick it off. I had the pleasure of spending Saturday with an amazing woman who is visually impaired. And she just kept blowing me away the whole day. And, Friday night she sat down at her piano and played and sang this incredible song. And what it brought up for me was the fact that I grew up singing and playing the piano, and music was a huge part of my life, a huge part. And just mostly for myself, it just brought me so much joy, and it unlocked a little piece of me that very few things actually unlock, because like Lori, I can just get extremely focused and just, you know, no messing around kind of thing. So the one thing that I would invite more of into my life is music, and not only listening, but participating in music and starting to sing and play a little bit more again. And so I'm just wondering if there is something for you, and if there's not, just ask you for, you know, final thoughts and questions or thoughts and input about today. But Carey, what about you? Is there anything that you're inviting more of into your life right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a little bit like Betty Ann. I like the change. So I've been trying to do something that stretches me every month. So I have my May already set up. I'm going to trapeze class. Because why not? I've never done it, and hey, so yeah, and you know, the month prior it was I'd never mediated a panel of speakers, so that was, so it's a variety of different things, but trying to stretch myself in different ways and use different muscles, as Betty Ann sort of put it. So yeah, I just try to pick something different to look forward to, and I don't know, be open to where it might go. Maybe I'll be a trapeze person. I don't know.
I seriously think you have a career with Cirque du Soleil. Like, I think it's just a matter of time, right?
Hey, I did silks last year, and holy moly, that's like trying to climb up a wet noodle. Like, that's tough. I have much more appreciation when I go to Cirque du Soleil now. I do have to say that. But yeah, just do something that stretches and builds up confidence.
Betty, do you, with the mentorship program, and the women might be, you know, curious to hear a little bit more about it, but I am curious how you approach stretching yourself with the women that are in that program. You know, it almost makes me think of like turning the calendar, you know, turning to a new month of May, and there's that big, you know, my team always bugs me because it's yet another product or idea, right? But there's that big thing, it's May, and how are you stretching yourself this month? How do you handle that part of the conversation with the young women that you're working with in the program?
I'm going to answer that, but I have to tell Carey first that I told my family for my birthdays and Christmases, I don't need any more stuff. I want everybody to give me experiences.
Yes, me too.
So my sister just gave me a trapeze ride.
What?
We can go together.
Yeah, so I'm afraid of heights, so I had to climb up this double ladder, and the whole time I'm climbing it, I'm thinking, this is going to be an exercise in trust. I'm going to have a lot more trusting when this is over. And I know that I have no upper body strength. Whenever I work out in the gym, I know that. And I did a complete face plant.
Perfect. Inspiring.
And she videotaped it, and I put it on Facebook so I could laugh at me.
Good.
So
I'm sure I'll have a couple too.
What do we do in our mentorship program? What we do is we talk about taking, one of the problems that women have in general is taking risks. And part of the problem is that little girls on the playground are told 3 times as much as little boys to be careful. And we gain confidence by doing things. And so therefore, little girls sit quietly by their mothers. They don't take risks. Little boys go out and skin their knees and learn that they can take risks and they can get up and keep going and everything's okay. So what we do to ask people to stretch is to take small calculated risks and to look at things that they'd like to do and not have to do the whole big thing today, but to say, what can I do that will lead me to that goal? I'm going to keep taking small calculated risks. So we do small calculated risks, and then we say it's important to stretch, but when you're stretching, do not expect perfection, because that's what we do. We set stretch goals, we expect perfection, and then when we don't measure up, we think we've failed. So we have to be really careful.
I don't know what you're talking about. Not a clue.
Oh, no, that's so great. That is really great. And Betty Ann, I have to ask you, is there anything new or different that you're inviting into your life right now?
I set a goal for this year that I wanted to have a larger spiritual practice in my life. And so that's what I'm seeking.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joan, I'm going to ask you that same question. I don't know if you have any thoughts on these trapeze artists that have been speaking up, but we've been talking about the good things that we have been doing and how, you know, how we've been stretching ourselves. Curious if there's, I know the whole book writing process has been pretty big for you, and I wonder, I guess I'm curious if what you're inviting new into your life for this year ties into that, or is it something different?
Well, since I've been pretty busy with the book for a few years now, I think I want to just continue that a little. And I'm hoping to start some small groups, maybe 6 to 8, be they single mothers, new mothers, young singles, widows, widowers, and having them work together, cook together in that same notion of preparing meals for a week in one day, one evening, and have them stretch. And with them, I'll be stretching because every group will be different. Mm-hmm. And just interacting and building some strength and positiveness in the community. Because I think at my stage where I'm at now, I think it's time to be giving back and sharing with people in the community. And I just want to make one little comment to follow on from Betty Ann about perfection in your stretch. I think you just have to be positive. Mm-hmm. Being positive helps those stretches, and usually you're successful.
Yeah, that's great. And the ability to laugh at yourself. Lori, what are you inviting more of into your life right now?
Well, I will never get on a trapeze ever. No, I shouldn't say ever. I shouldn't say ever. But I can't even imagine. But I'm going to get my motorcycle license.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So that I can next year go on a European tour on a motorcycle with my husband, which never in my lifetime would I have ever thought I'd ever say I do. But I'm going to do it. Wow. That's what I'm doing. So I'm breathing through it now.
Actually, in the category of new experiences, I will say that I'm going to Burning Man this year.
Oh my. Fabulous. I can tell Christina thinks that's pretty cool. That's fabulous. Oh, that's excellent. Well, we have just a few more minutes. I'm wondering if there's any final thoughts. I know the 60 minutes goes very fast. We will be sharing the webinar, and you're more than welcome to continue the conversation online, add your thoughts, your links, your feedback, and whatnot. I know that I'll be sharing how to access Joan's book for those of us that are interested. But any final thoughts from anyone on the panel today that you'd like to leave us with? I'll just leave it open.
I guess one thought is that when you make a change, just make one change at once and give yourself at least 2 or 3 months to become comfortable and absorb that change, and then go on to the next one. Because I think so often we try to change too much at once, and our poor brain can't absorb it. We can't learn the new patterns. So I think just step by step, and you'll be successful.
Thank you.
That's very good advice. The one thing, we talk a lot in my mentorship program about energy, and the way I describe it is that we all need to do what we were meant to do. We're born with certain gifts and talents, and if we're doing it's like the 80-20 rule in business, which says that you're getting 80% of your business from 20% of your customers. Well, I always say that if you're doing what you're meant to do, you're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of your energy. Mm-hmm. If you're doing things where it's not really who you are, or you're not being authentic, you're probably going to be spending 80% of your energy to get 20% of your results.
Mm-hmm.
I very much agree. In fact, a huge part of what I do with women is to help them just focus in on what that is, you know, where they get their best traction, but also what brings them the most joy. Where is that 20%? And then just be okay to let that other stuff go. You know, it's, yeah. Carey, any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would say everybody needs to find that one thing for them that boosts their energy. And I think it's different for each of us, whether it's food, quiet time, meditate, whatever that is. I think that's the real, that's where the real work is to find that thing that's really authentic to you, that helps to bring you more resiliency and energy and makes you better for the day and for a lifetime. So I'd say do that inner work, find that thing, and that's just the starting point.
Agreed. And Lori, I think you get the last word.
I think I love this, and I think that this really epitomizes community and friendship and women gathering together. And I think we just need to do that more, like this type of thing, or be getting involved in your community and having groups of friends that really support your vision, your dream, what we're talking about, energy, all those things. Because when you're in alignment, it just feels so good. So.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm going to check in with you about setting the timer. So I want to thank you for being part of today as a guest, as a listener, because the one thing that definitely boosts my energy as high as it can possibly go is convening powerful women for a purpose. And that is includes every single one of you. So thank you for being part of today's webinar. And I really appreciate your time and your energy as we keep moving women forward faster in Canada. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.